You've called that a very difficult learning experience, and that's exactly what it is, because
Yeah.
I don't look at it as a failure. I look at, if as long as I learn something, I did not fail. And that's a big fear for people is failure. And
It is.
I'm here to tell you,
Yeah.
anybody who's successful in real estate has failed.
Yeah.
Anybody and everybody. And if they haven't failed, either they're too new or they're lying to you. I mean, that's
if
the
they
truth.
haven't failed, I have a hard time investing with them. I don't mean to be a pain, or I don't mean to be a
Yeah.
cynic, but I mean, that is one of the questions I ask when I
Yeah.
lend my money out to people is I go,
Yeah.
tell me about your failure. Because
Right.
if you can't tell me about a failure and you can't tell me how you managed that failure,
Right.
then I don't know who you are when the
Yes.
rubber meets the road.
Right.
And if I'm going to hand you $100,000 or $500,000, I really need to know who you are. I am Christina Suter, and this is the Real Estate Breakthrough Show, where we talk about the reality of real estate, the mindset you need in order to face the reality of what it is, and tips and tricks to get you moving forward in investing. I am your host, Christina Suter. The Real Estate Breakthrough Show with Paige Panzarello with the Cash Flow Chick. Super excited to have her here. I do love Paige, and I have to tell you, I am completely biased. Now, you guys know, I invite people to my show who I feel like have quality character and integrity, that are engaging, bring a approach to their business that is new or is solid, either one, but something I can recommend and stand behind. And I have invested with Paige myself. And so it's easy to stand behind her because I have seen her checks come into the mail and actually return principal to me, actually return interest to me. And so I have had personal experience as an investor with the Cash Flow Chick, Paige Panzarello. Lovely to have you here tonight, Paige.
Oh, Christina, thank you so much for having me on. As you know, I love talking with you and your audience, and I'm just honored to be here.
Oh, it's always good to have you. Truly. It's great because I can recommend you so easily. All right, let me read a little bit of your bio and then we'll see where this interview takes us.
All
So
right.
Paige Panzarello is the cash flow chick. That is singular because there's only one Paige. She's truly unique. Having been a real estate investor and entrepreneur for over 20 years, Paige has experienced many facets of real estate investing, many facets. Her experience includes funding and running her own residential and commercial construction and acquisitions company. Yes, that beautiful blonde you're seeing there runs a construction company. Buy and hold residential and commercial real estate investing, tax deeds and liens, and fix and flips, to name just a few. She currently focuses on non-performing notes that she has purchases all across the United States, whether in notes, residential, commercial real estate, in California, Arizona, nationwide. Paige has been successful in completing over 150 million in real estate transactions to date. That is correct. Let me read that number again. 150 million worth of real estate transactions to date. She has been a regular featured guest on the Cash Flow Chicks podcast. Cash Flow Guys with the Cash Flow Chick.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Cash Flow Guys podcast. You can also find her on the Note Closers Show, Cash Flow Ninja, Secrets to Real Estate Investing, and Real Estate Investor Goddesses podcast, to name a few, because now you can add, you were on my previous show, which is Ask Christina First, and now you're on the Real Estate Breakthrough Show, so you can add that as well.
Okay.
Paige teaches the Building Wealth with Notes workshop that drills down into the details of how to buy non-performing notes, what to look for, the due diligence to perform, and how to mitigate risk. Now, just so you know, before she let me be one of her investors, she required that I get knowledgeable in notes because she doesn't really want to work with people who aren't looking to be educated. She doesn't want to work with people who are so new to it, they don't understand their own risk, because she really does live by the motto, people first, profit second. She wants to ensure that the people that she works with in her company, outside of her company, in her realm of investing, that it really is her taking care of people. And I personally have been able to confirm that that is my experience with her. So Paige, I just thank you. Thank you for who you are as a human being. And thank you for what you do in the business.
Thank you, Christina. You know, it's you and I both have really bonded over the course of the last couple of years. We share kind of a similar background, a similar story, but more than any of all of that, you and I bonded because we both walk in integrity, and you know, that's just important to both of us. And I think that's a unique tie that binds, especially in real estate and real estate investing, when there can be some kind of shady characters out there.
Well, you know, I don't normally like to speak to the negative. That's not normally my jive, right? I try to speak to the positive,
Yep.
but there we go. But what I do find is that I started in real estate 30 years ago, and you started in real estate a long time ago as well.
Yep.
And when I started in real estate, there was the predominant take, or the predominant mode of operation, was real estate meetings. The platform for them was for selling to people in the audience books or tapes or courses. The focus was not education. The focus was not building community. The focus was being able to sell your coursework, because that would be the value that the meeting runner or that the speaker would find is in monetary. And now there are multiple networks. I mean,
Yeah.
For Investors by Investors is a network. The REN, which you were one part of the founding of, the REN network, WREN, the REN network. These networks are focused on building community and building education.
Yep.
And not necessarily in building profits. The profits come after you've developed your relationship with the individuals that you meet in those meetings, or that you get to talk to in those meetings. The profits come after you've established who you are. They can check you out. Right? That's my statement. Like, come to my meeting and check me out, because why would you invest with somebody you haven't checked out? Right? So come check me out. So the culture of real estate is shifting. I don't think it's quite finished. I don't think it's done with its transition yet, but it's definitely shifting.
Yeah.
And I like that it's shifting, that it has become that type of culture. But in the non-performing notes world, let's go back to your world of expertise. In the non-performing notes world, it also used to be that people would buy notes with the intention of the note failing. That was the purpose of either buying and or creating notes, was with the intention of the note failing. But I know that you've put a whole series of systems in place in making the notes performing first.
Yeah.
And that being the first focus. And then if the note cannot perform, we understand that. Right?
Yeah, of course.
So talk to us a little bit about what is it that you've put in place that focuses on really making this performing. And then if can't, then you need to do what needs to be done.
Yeah, so let's start out, because I'm not sure that all of your audience might know what exactly a note really is, right?
Okay, let's do that.
So a note, very simply, is a debt instrument. It literally is just a promise to pay. And there are many different kinds of notes that you can buy. You can buy performing notes where they're paying on time. You can buy non-performing notes where they're not paying at all. You can buy notes that are on cars. You can buy notes that are on houses. You can even buy notes that are unsecured, like credit card debt. I focus on first position, non-performing notes secured by real estate. I choose first position because that gives me the power to be the kind of commander in chief, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I have the control and the power, which is very important to me. And we'll, I'm sure, get to that once we get to a little bit of what happened in my real estate career, my story. But I like to be the bank in the first position. So I get to choose what happens with that loan. Okay. Now, most people think I'm crazy because you hear there, you buy first position non-performing notes. That doesn't make any sense. Well, there's kind of crazy like a fox, right? So I buy the non-performing notes because I get a much bigger discount on my purchase price, and that allows me to mitigate risk. And for me, again, that's a really important thing. So because I build in that cushion of equity, because I buy at a much bigger discount, I'm mitigating my risk. Okay. So also, it allows me the opportunity to start working with my borrowers and help them to get back on their feet. Because as you know, Christina, all of us have had life happen to us, right? something happens, and
Something
it
happens.
happens every day. We're in the middle of it happening right on our head, right?
We are, and we'll get to that topic too. It is in the middle of happening right on our head right now.
Exactly.
It
I
is.
mean, job loss, divorce, medical conditions, you name it, it
Mhm.
goes on each and every day of our life. So just because our borrower has stopped paying doesn't mean they're a bad person, it just means life happened to them.
Mhm.
And so when I buy a non-performing note, I'm in a unique position where I'm able to try and work with that borrower to give them a second chance and help them to get back on their feet and to reperform. And because I buy it at such a big discount, I have that working room to do that, which is awesome.
But that's not the only way you mitigate risk. Obviously, having been an investor with you and having studied your system a little bit, I also know that that's like an original step. First, you buy it right. But
Yes.
then after that, you also have other things as well. So talk about that, because I think it's
Yeah.
important that people get, you're mitigating risk all the way through, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
somebody's going to want to do non-performing notes, whether they want to buy the note from you, whether they want to take your class, whether they want to do it without even ever having talked to you, but hopefully getting themselves educated first through somebody, right? They need to
Yes.
understand there's a process of mitigating risk
Yeah.
all the way through, and you've
Yeah.
thought it through from beginning to end. So next step.
Yes. Okay. So a variety of different things here. In note investing, we have literally 23 different exit strategies. So right off the bat, because you have that much flexibility, as long as you don't, as the investor, don't have tunnel vision, when you have that much flexibility, you can mitigate a tremendous amount of risk. Okay. That's number one. Number two, definitely, I mean, you could go out today knowing nothing about note investing and buy a note online. I do not suggest you do that. Please, please, please do not do that. I don't care if you don't educate yourself with me, but educate yourself before you go into this medium, please. Because there are pitfalls. Now, I will say that there's a tremendous amount of due diligence that we do ahead of time prior to buying the note. And during the due diligence process, there's probably 3 different stages that we go through. So that also mitigates a tremendous amount of risk because we know a tremendous amount about the note and the mindset of the borrower before we even buy that note. Okay. So there's that process as well. But all the due diligence steps on one on top of the other are nuggets of information that allow us to pivot and move, and it will allow us to hopefully buy that note very well, and come to a great and profitable exit. Does that always happen that way? No, sometimes there's things that are missed. Again, we are human just like everybody else, right? But usually when you've got that much due diligence that you do and that much flexibility and exit strategies, you're really in a great position to be able to mitigate and prevent those losses.
I think you hit on something which is important. A lot of people can get the concept of the financial side. Okay, you buy a note, you buy it at a discount. You buy it at a nice big discount, then you have space
Right.
to negotiate for quote unquote trying to get the note performing again, because now you have the financial space to either discount the principal, lower the payments, say you're going to lower the interest rate. There are many ways you can play with the financial end of it. And maybe that's obvious to some people, maybe not obvious to others, but if you've taken a course, most courses on non-performing notes will talk about that. But you've also talked about the mindset. You're not just familiar with the note, you're familiar with who's the people that you're now going to be working with.
Yes.
Because when you buy the note, you're buying that financial asset, but you're also buying the story that goes with that note, which would allow it to become performing or not. The story is almost more important about it becoming performing than the dollar that you buy the note at.
Yeah, I have a very good friend in this business, and her thing is every house has a heartbeat, and it's true. So we take extra steps in my team. We take extra steps doing our due diligence process to be able to figure out what is going on with that borrower, because that really does show us the pathway that we're going to be able to get to our exit. Now, Christina, as you know, we make our money when we buy and we collect our money when we exit. So, having that kind of thought process of where am I going to exit and how am I going to get there is really helpful to be able to determine, how successful we're going to be with this note, or how many of the exit strategies that we have, how many different options are we going to really have?
Yeah.
Yeah. So So really important to understand the mindset of the borrower. Now, that doesn't always mean that, you go into, we generally don't use all 23 exit strategies on a day-to-day basis. It's just nice to know that that safety blanket is there, right?
Yeah.
We generally only use 4. And of those 4, my favorite is to get them to reperform. But sometimes the borrower's already left. And so, we've now got a vacant property and we still have a debt that the borrower is responsible for to pay us because we literally become the bank, right? But, we might be able to do something like, instead of a foreclosure ending up on their credit report, we might be able to talk with them and get a deed in lieu of foreclosure, which means we will accept the deed to the property as payment in full for our loan. Now, again, there's certain steps and provisions in terms of your education that you need to know to take to look, to be sure that you're not going to kind of step in it, so to speak.
I was gonna say, yeah, because certain states allow for that, other states don't. There are other ways in which you need to negotiate it. Right? There's taxes and there's hidden liens, mechanics liens, and other things that you need to ensure before you start saying, what does it mean to actually get a deed in lieu? In lieu of what? In lieu of just your note, or in lieu of everything?
In lieu of foreclosure.
Right. It's supposed to be in lieu of foreclosure, but there might be more there unless you've done your research.
Yeah.
And now you've just taken on a property. If you just do it indeed in lieu of your particular piece. Yeah. Right. Your particular note, there's a possibility that there's something on there that might be a county lien.
Absolutely. And of course, county liens and municipal liens come in first, even before first position note holders.
Exactly.
So that's the only thing that also does not get wiped out in a foreclosure. So oftentimes, there's a foreclosure that happens. And if you're not aware that there's $10,000 in delinquent property taxes, if you have you take it to foreclosure and then the foreclosure happens and it doesn't sell to a third party buyer, now you as the new property owner are now going to be responsible for those delinquent taxes. So there's a lot of education that if you want to do this as a business, you need to educate yourself. Absolutely. And it's very front end loaded. And what I mean by that is most of my time, or my team's time, is spent in the very beginning before we even buy the note. Once we buy the note, the beauty part about this business is that we hand it off to our other team members, our loss mitigation team, our servicing team, our realtors, our foreclosure attorneys, et cetera. And they handle all of the day-to-day stuff. So we just kind of manage the managers, which is also really great.
Well, it is really great because it allows you to do a portfolio of them, right? Because you not only you don't manage just one, the one I had with you isn't the one you're working on, right? I mean, you're working with, I'm assuming there's more, based upon all the people I've talked to, they're clearly more than just me is invested with you, right? So clearly you're working on more than just one at a time.
Yes, and we've had more than one, thank you very much, together.
Yeah, you didn't get 150 based on my investment load with you.
No, that's true. That's true.
Not that I'm not a really cool chick or anything, and you wouldn't want to do business with me on multiple properties, but that's not all me. I know that for sure.
Yeah. So, the beauty part about this business too, honestly, Christina, is that if you just want to supplement your income on a monthly basis, you can do that. You don't have to have a portfolio. My portfolio generally at any point in time generally rotates in and out about 100 assets per, at any given time. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less,
right?
But it averages around 100, and that keeps me hopping, right? But you as an investor don't need to do that. You can supplement your income 1 or 2 notes, just, and just have some cash flow, which is awesome.
I don't want to work that hard. I have to confess, I don't want to work that hard. I'm already working too hard right now. I don't want to work that hard on top of it. So I can't resist. I really can't. Okay. So COVID, we are in the time of COVID.
Yeah.
And I think it's hugely important that anybody who's listening to this and we're still in the time of COVID, hear what you have to share about this. So I've heard it. So I'm just going to let you share it. I'm like setting you up, saying, go girl. Because I've heard it, but I want you to tell the numbers because I think that's what's powerful.
Yeah, it really is. COVID is very uncertain for everybody. And I will say, for us note investors, it's really positioning us well to not only build our wealth for our family and ourselves, but also to be able to help people. And as you know, Christina, I mean, we've reported and heard hundreds of thousands of jobs already lost. There's going to be more coming. Businesses are closing. People are losing their houses. Now, I will tell you that we haven't even seen the crescendo of this. This hasn't even, for the note space, it hasn't really hit and started yet. And what I mean by that is that the government has been propping us up, right? They've given us idle loans, they've given us PPP, they've given us stimulus money, et cetera. So they've propped us up.
Yes.
Even
installed the whole thing. I'm trying to stay quiet. I'm so sorry, but you're in my area. Right? They installed the whole thing. They've pushed the effect of the quote unquote unemployment of COVID out with those exact loans, the PPP, which was payroll replacement, right? The idle loans, all of those, the unemployment, all of that has been to push the effect of COVID out from happening. The effect of the unemployment from happening due to COVID, to see maybe if they could almost stretch it out beyond until COVID could be solved. But now we're here. We're in October 2020 to stamp this, right? We're in October 2020.
Right.
And I don't think it's going to work. They're not going to be able to push out the supplementals past the end of the effect of COVID unraveling in the small business space, in the real estate space, in the office space, all the areas that are being affected.
Yeah. Okay. And here's the thing is that, again, just like you said, and I've done the research, I've looked at the numbers. Now, I'm going to go back a little bit because in November of 2019, again, life happens every day. So understand that my niche, notes, has been around, will be around forever. Okay. Because life happens every day. People default on their mortgages every day, regardless of whether we're in COVID or not. Right.
Right.
So November of 2019, just first position, just single family residences. We're not talking about commercial land, any of that stuff, just first position, no seconds, no HELOCs, none of that. Just first position, single family homes across the country. In November of 2019, we were at $52 billion that we were showing as bad debt.
52 billion. Just to make it clear, $52 billion for people who are tracking it. Okay.
Now that was November of 2019. In September of 2020, less than a year, that number jumped over $6.2 billion. So we're actually at $58.2 billion in September of 2020. And again, we haven't even started on this thing.
It hasn't unraveled yet.
Right. So that being said, and again, always with the thought in mind that every home has a heartbeat, right? We are in a very unique position as note investors to be able to capitalize on the opportunity to help ourselves and our family, but also while we're helping other people.
Right.
And helping them to stay in their home. Okay. And that for me is huge. There are, certainly there are going to be note investors that are out there that want the houses, and hopefully they will buy notes just on homes that are vacant. So they're not kicking families out. It's going to be bad enough as it is. I personally, my plan, my favorite exit strategy is to try and work with our borrower to keep them in their home. But I also see pricing, because inventory is going to explode, in my opinion. Now, I don't have a crystal ball, but this is pretty close. And in my opinion, we're going to hit 2008 levels on steroids, Christina. I don't even think that anybody is anticipating just how bad this is going to be. And there's going to be a tremendous amount of inventory, which drives prices way down, which puts us even better position, to help people and make a great deal of money doing it, which is great.
So Bruce Norris talked about what percentage of the market needs to be in default for it to actually start affecting prices. And I think if I remember correctly, I think his number is 12%. There's a churning point when more than 12% of the market of houses on the market are REO. So it's a little more than 1 in 10. Now, if we're talking about, let me slide this in here. If we're talking about non-performing notes which is effectively REOs, right? So not only are we
Ish.
ish,
Yes.
they don't truly translate exactly one for the other, because a non-performing note could be heading towards foreclosure, may or may not have received a notice of default, but they're generally somewhere in the pathway.
Yes. So the note is the debt, the REO is the actual house.
That's what I'm, thank you.
Yes.
It's good. I didn't mean to interrupt you. No, that's good that you're clarifying that, because that's what I'm trying to like say is I'm trying to use these two tracks and put them next to each other.
Yeah.
That's exactly where I'm going.
So the debt will turn into the REO.
The debt turns into the REO. So, so there is, given that we're looking at, I think we're looking at unemployment that potentially could be as high as 16 to 20%. And houses house a heart, they house a job, right?
Right.
Then that 16 to 20% of unemployment will be affecting single families, people who own their homes, will be affecting rental units, people who rent their homes, which would then be affecting the landlords on those rental units, whether those rental units are single family or whether they're multifamily, right? So that should cascade through. And that's when we're going, oh, that's where the difficulty is. That's where the tie is between COVID. Small businesses, by the way, small businesses who hire 10 employees or less hire almost like 47, I'll say 45 to 47% of the population workforce is hired by businesses who have 10 employees or less, who aren't going to have a lot of cash built up to be able to survive the length of the shutdown. That's always been the difficulty, the constant conversation, right? So then you go, well, where is the space? And a lot of people are focused on, well, when the single families become defaulted and the prices start to go down. Well, you're in the space before that. You're in the space before the 12% hit the market. You're in the space where the note itself is defaulting.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And that, and some of those, you know, some of those won't ever hit the market. Some of those will be bought by you and they'll be made performing, or some of those will be bought by larger banks. So there's all of this space that your non-performing notes actually can participate in before we even see the downturn in the prices of real estate itself. Months, literally months, I would say 3 to 6 months before we can even truly calculate or notice, before we can truly chart the actual downturn in the prices of real estate, that you're playing in that field before that even shows up.
Yeah, I like to call it the backdoor way of investing.
Okay, go for it.
No, it's just because literally we become the bank. That's the thing, is that, you know, a lot of people that are investing in other mediums of real estate, they wait. They're the second or the third step in the process. I'm the first step in the process.
Right.
And when you're the bank, you're the one that gets all the control, which is fantastic. Because again, you know, and I'm sure when we get to my story, you're going to understand why control is so important to me.
Yes. And I will commiserate with you on why control is so important. Absolutely.
Exactly. Same thing for you.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we are kind of the backdoor way of investing, because we're the ones that are initiating all of this stuff. Now, again, you know, during COVID times, the government came through and tried to, you know, for a short period of time, they put moratoriums on even foreclosures, but that was very short-lived. Understand, a lot of the states are opening up and allowing that to happen. So I actually don't even think we're going to start seeing this stuff really hitting until December or January. Okay. That's when we're going to start seeing it.
That's when, that's when the legalities will allow it to start unfolding.
Well, people will have defaulted at that point, because, you know, the moratorium has been preventative, even though they may have been defaulting to this point. It's been preventative of that 90-day marker to start for a notice of default, for instance. So that's going to start, that's starting right about now is what's happening. And in September, you know, just, or people had forbearance agreements. That's another thing, you know, they immediately ran out, not knowing what a forbearance agreement was, and put one in place. Now, not all forbearance agreements are bad, don't get me wrong, but the ones that the big banks put in place is basically just a deferment of those payments, but they come due at the end of that 120 days. So
versus coming due or being attached to the end of the loan. Some of them get
Yes.
attached to the loan. That's something that a
Yes.
payee can manage. But a lot of people,
I do, which is what I will end up doing. I mean, as the bank, I'm able to forgive
Make
debt.
that
I'm
that's
able to add it on to the end of the loan. I'm
Right.
able to reduce interest rates, reset everything. I mean, I have a lot of flexibility as the bank in working with my borrower. The big banks don't have necessarily that same flexibility because they're federally insured. So there's a certain, there's certain things that they can do that
Well,
they can't do
and
that
they're
I can't.
servicers and not necessarily owners as well, because there's servicers
Correct.
on some of those notes, and the notes have been bifurcated out to a variety of investors, which makes it harder for them to have true choice over how to manage it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we haven't even, like I said, we haven't even, started this process really. I don't think it's going to start really until December or January. And then once those foreclosures start hitting and being processed and going through, now we're going to start seeing a lot of these waves of inventory coming through in the market. Probably in the next, I'm going to say 6 months, within 6 months of the beginning of the year. So, and I honestly think, Christina, it's probably going to run 2 to 3 years at a minimum before we can recover from this.
Okay.
So
you think that's because of the legalities of unraveling defaulted real estate? I mean, because it takes years, to unravel the Great Depression. It takes years to unravel the Great Recession, and the amount of shadow inventory or inventory that is actually in default that isn't necessarily being shown as being in default, but the notes are out there as non-performing, right? And some of that shadow inventory is still rotating around. Here we are, literally 8 years later. Is it logistics, or is it the unemployment and the concept of COVID itself continuing to affect small business closures, affecting employment, affecting office spaces? Is it the more surface and obvious effects that you think is going to make this drag on, or is it both?
I think it's a little of both, honestly. I don't think this country, even in 2008, I don't think it really has seen this type of impact from a pandemic. In 2008, there was certainly you and I both lived through that, and we both saw that this was coming.
No, I wish I'd seen it sooner. I'll confess. No. I was too much in the middle of things to see it. I'm sorry to say. I mean, I saw it after it started pulling out, hundreds of thousands of money out of my bank account. Like you, that's when I kind of went, oh, we're having a really big problem here, not a regular problem here. We need to sort this out now.
No,
go ahead, honey.
We'll get there in a
we will. We're gonna get the Lily in 1 minute, because I'm gonna let you finish this thought, and then I'm gonna go right to that.
Yep. So literally, I saw it coming, but the thing is that people were just voluntarily walking away from their mortgages because, they reset and they had an opportunity to recover. It's not necessarily because they lost their jobs. I think this one is going to be a lot different in that there's already a huge impact in terms of the unemployment, and small businesses not being able to keep the doors open. So that's going to be a really key factor on this go around as opposed to 2008. And that's why I think the recovery is going to take a lot longer.
Yeah, I mean, the newspaper's full of Disney laying off thousands of people.
Yep.
My Bank of America on the corner, which was open through COVID, is now closed. They don't have any tellers in Bank of America itself, in that particular store or that particular branch. I know that Universal Studios has laid off almost 80% of their staff. And so, I mean, we're seeing larger companies that had the capacity to hold through this longer time period. And they're starting to having to not just furlough employees, but fire employees because they cannot continue to sustain. And so I've been focusing on the small businesses because they're the ones I expected to be the first to unravel in this trying to sustain themselves through a time period where they're not making enough money. I'm starting to see indicators that's hitting the larger, top 500 companies as well. Now I'm going, okay, now we're going to start seeing what the true fallout is going to be now that we pull the veil away of these temporary stimulus programs. Okay. I have 15 minutes left with you. You
Oh,
have to tell your story
okay.
about what was your birth by fire in real estate and how it has brought you up and raised you up.
Yeah.
So, because that's really, I mean, the thing that's transformational about real estate is its capacity to let us have financial freedom
Yep.
over our time and over our finances, be entrepreneurs, and really drive ourselves forward. But it's also a pretty, vicious master sometimes.
It can be, absolutely. And, this is again, one of the reasons you and I bonded
Mhm.
so quickly and
So
became
tell it,
fast
girl.
friends is because we do have a very similar story. We
Mhm.
both started when we were young. Um, Real estate chose me. I did not choose real estate. It really did choose me. My grandmother had passed away rather suddenly. She had a very large estate in Arizona and California, and and it was about $4 million in debt. And so off I went as a young child, a mere child, off to Arizona, knowing nothing at all about real estate or real estate investing. And, back then, like you said, Christina, and I actually did the math, and scarily enough, it's been almost 25 years. Oh my gosh. But back then there weren't any RIA groups. There was barely even the internet, much less.
But we did have
much less.
TV and cars. I'm just saying.
We did. I know.
We had
Just
TV
saying.
and
Just saying.
cars, but we didn't have internet.
But really, the reality of internet back then was there barely was any.
Yeah,
There
no,
so
there
the
wasn't
information was
the
not
information.
as readily available.
No.
So I had to surround myself and ask people who had the answers to the questions that I was asking, right?
Mhm.
But I quickly determined that I kind of had a head for this real estate thing and that I really liked it. And so I was very fortunate in that I surrounded myself with the right people. I ended up bringing the estate back within a 3-year period of time. I brought it back to the black. So we were operating. We had 38 townhome units. We had some land, and we had a sewer treatment plant. And boy, that's a stinky business. Um,
Yes, that's a
quickly,
literal statement as well as a figurative statement, I'm assuming.
yes, yes. And so, I was able to bring everything back in the black. We got the townhome units fully occupied, but I realized really quickly that because we were in kind of a boutique market, that I was not able to command the rents to sustain longevity of holding on to those assets. So I leveraged the sale of all of those things. And I took that money and I decided that I wanted to build on the land. And so I hired a contractor, and we had our plans. We started to come out of the ground. And I'll tell you, I very quickly realized that he was going to bankrupt me before I even had walls up. So I fired him and I started my own construction company, and I knew nothing
Really?
at all about construction. But again, I was young and I was bold and I was fearless at the time. And, I surrounded myself with the right people. I found a qualifying party. I made him a shareholder in my corporation. So the corporation held the licenses, which was very smart on my part. And we grew really fast. I mean, we ended up holding all of our licenses except for HVAC and roofing. And only because the liability insurance was so high on those two licenses. But we had 36 employees, and we were building hand over fist. So keep in mind, this is, early 2000s, even before 2005. And we grew and grew and grew. And I was making money hand over fist, but I was working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it was starting to take a toll on my health. I was smart with my money. Thankfully, I invested it in cash flowing assets. So I had many other different forms of assets, rental properties that were cash flowing. I had cash, I had equipment, all kinds of different assets. So when I saw that this crash was coming, and I was only leveraged like 10%. So I thought, oh, okay, this crash is coming. Yes, but I'm only leveraged 10%. It's not going to happen to me.
Yeah.
I have great relationships with my investors. I have great relationships with my lenders. None of this is going to affect me. Whew. That was a little naive on my part, because it did affect me. It didn't dawn on me that I might have been in a pretty good position, but those around me that owed me money were not in the same position. And so literally I fronted millions upon millions of dollars in when you're in construction, you pay the bills for 90 to 120 days prior to you getting repaid, paid back and reimbursed for that.
Yeah.
So I literally had millions of dollars already laid out, and people owed me money and they filed bankruptcy on me.
Right.
And so when the crash happened, it literally happened right on my head. Again, I was really fortunate because I decided I'm not going to do the bankruptcy route. I'm not going to file and get all that debt discharged. I'm going to sell everything that I own, pennies on the dollar. And literally that's what I did. It took me 3 years, and I paid off all of the people that I owed money to, including my investors. But at the end of the day, I lost $20 million. And that shaped me.
Yeah, that shapes you. And that would be why this is called the real estate breakthrough, is because real estate will shape you.
Yeah.
So how did it shape you?
It did. And I love, I've coined your phrase. You've called that a very difficult learning experience. And that's exactly what it is, because I don't look at it as a failure. I look at as long as I learn something, I did not fail. And that's a big fear for people is failure. And I'm here to tell you, anybody who's successful in real estate has failed. Anybody and everybody. And if they haven't failed, either they're too new or they're lying to you. I mean, that's
if they haven't failed, I have a hard time investing with them. I don't mean to be a pain, or I don't mean to be a cynic, but I mean, that is one of the questions I ask when I lend my money out to people is I go, tell me about your failure. Because if you can't tell me about a failure and you can't tell me how you manage that failure, then I don't know who you are when the rubber meets the road.
Right.
And if I'm going to hand you $100,000 or $500,000, I really need to know who you are.
Exactly. And, again, so I call it my blessing and that incredibly difficult learning experience, because it was a blessing for me. It brought me back home. All of my family and friends were in California. I was off in Arizona for years. I was able to, it shaped who I am as an investor, how I treat money. It really taught me what my risk tolerances are. And that's the reason when I hit the note space, when I came back into real estate and real estate investing, when I hit the note space, it checked all of the boxes for me, all of those boxes, because I am very risk averse. I do not like risk of any kind. Clearly.
Having laid it out all, right, having gone from fixing a problem to owning a variety of units to, let's just be a contractor, be a professional in the field, right? Run a large company that probably required millions of dollars on a regular basis to maintain, right?
Yeah. I was running over $25,000 a week just in payroll.
Right. Okay, there you go. See, exactly. $25,000 a week in payroll, which is $100,000 to $135,000 a month, depending upon which month you're talking about.
Yeah. And then add in the insurance and the taxes and all the rest of that, and you can do the math.
And you can do the math from there. So now you find the note space because it checks. Now, I love the note space for my own reasons. Has a lot to do with peace of mind and diversification and how much time it requires of me and stuff like that. And it fits my investment goals. But why is it check all of your boxes?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, first, control. So I'm in control. I make the decisions, and that really helps to ease my mind, because I'm not relying on others for my well-being and my profitability. Okay. That's number one. Number two, I can do this business anywhere in the world. This is not location specific. So as long as I could be on a beach, as long as I have a computer and an internet connection, and a phone, I can do this business anywhere in the world. So that gives me a lot of flexibility and a lot of time. Again, when you are the bank, you are the one to make the decisions. I control the assets. I control the cash flow. There's nothing that I do not touch as the bank. For me, it allows me flexibility of creating chunks of cash and streams of monthly cash flow. So, starting back out, because I had to build up my portfolio again, I had to build up my cash reserves again. So I was able to create chunks of cash to buy more notes, which ended up ultimately cash flowing, right?
Right.
So that allowed me to diversify. I could go on and on and on about.
Well, and there's set time periods, so the portfolio is constantly rotating. So if there's a risk in a
Constantly
particular
rotating.
market, you can actually rotate out of that
Yep.
particular market, not necessarily as quickly as maybe sometimes
Yep.
I would like to. Like sometimes I want to rotate faster,
Of course.
but it does allow you to rotate out of a market, right? Versus having to hold on through a whole market cycle.
Exactly.
So I like that. I mean, all the other reasons that you listed, but also the capacity of it being like, you've got big chunks coming back on a regular basis, which allows you to recraft your portfolio from your portfolio side out, as well as unengaging in a market. So
Exactly.
you get cash flow checks, you get chunk checks. So, it allows you to be in control not only of your own, of the assets, but in control of your own portfolio give and take. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
that's
And
what I would add as an investor from like the top down. Why do I
Yep.
like that in my portfolio as an investor?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I can choose to be in this investment short-term, long-term. It really is just, dependent upon who I am as an investor. And it just checks all of those boxes. So it's a tremendous form of investing, and I get to help people.
And you get to help, and you still get to
Yeah.
help people.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's the beauty of owning rentals is you get to help people, right? You get to house people, house jobs. But in notes, you also get to do that, especially in the non-performing note space, in the performing note space as well. But in the non-performing note space, you're specifically directly working with people and trying to make a difference in their lives, of them being able to help themselves, or them being able to come aware of, which is sometimes really hard, aware of the realization that they can't solve this one and they need to move on in some way.
Yeah.
And that can be really hard to accept, that something has fallen apart in their life enough that that's the case.
Yeah.
And that's a very hard moment for everybody, for all of us.
It
Any
is.
one of us who have lost, who've had our world moved on us, and then being able to accept that and sitting with others. So go ahead, you were saying.
Yeah, no, and that is hard, but sometimes I'll tell you, our borrowers feel so lost, and sometimes all they want to do is just walk away with a fresh start, and so they actually feel relief,
right,
when somebody's willing to say, okay, we'll let you do this, and we're not going to nail your credit because of it,
Right.
So
and we're not going to keep pounding you. We're not going to nail you to the wall.
Exactly.
We're not going to, I mean, whatever variety of things that they're worried about. Like, we're not going to chase you for forever.
Yeah.
We're going to make a settlement, and the settlement's going to be good, and we're going to be done with it. And we promise to keep our end up. You keep your end up. We can be, on the level with each other and getting this done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the other thing too, is that, I didn't realize it, but at the time when I first got back in, and now it just checks these boxes for me as well, is that I'm literally, I spend $0 in marketing for my deals. They literally come to my inbox for free. I don't have to send out yellow letters. I don't have to deal with distressed sellers. I don't have to do any of that stuff because I want the property, none of that stuff. Oftentimes the borrower is not even involved until after you buy the note.
Yes.
So not oftentimes, all the time.
Yes.
We can't talk to borrowers that we're not.
Talk to borrowers, right?
Don't do that.
Exactly.
Yeah, but also, I build relationships. That's how I market. And not only that, where I was going with this is that I didn't realize in the note space, in a lot of other real estate markets and spaces and mediums, there's a lot of competition. And this space is very collaborative. All of us kind of work together. Yes, there's competition. I don't want to say there's not competition, but we all work together. And it's a gentler form of investing as far as I'm concerned. And so, so that really, I'm not, overbidding $100,000 over asking price on broken houses and not getting that accepted. I mean, it's very collaborative. It's very gentle in terms of my ways of investing. And because I now educate people on how to do this, people have asked me, Paige, why are you teaching people to do this? You're teaching your competition. And I don't look at it that way. I'm teaching a collaborator. I'm building an army of collaborators. That's what I'm doing. That's my goal, is to build an army of collaborators where we can all work together and make money and help people. that's the coolest thing ever.
Paige, you're awesome. You're amazing. I love your story. I love your character. I love your integrity. I love your authenticity. Thank you for letting us know the truth, because that's hopefully people can hear that in this show by hearing people's stories and hearing it can be tough, but it can be rewarding. And that's why it's worth the time, and it grows you up, makes you show up, stand up, grow up without a question, but it still allows you to get that freedom that you're looking for in the end result. Like you talked about, you've created a company that lets you do that. I've created my version of a company and an investment portfolio that lets me do that. Yeah. And I'm getting back to that because I'm right now I have this one project, but that's besides the point. So the whole point is, thank you, Paige, for your time. How do people get a hold of you if they want to take your class? Yeah. Right? If they want, tell me the name of your class again, because I'm going to say it wrong.
That's okay. It's Building Wealth with Notes. So if you go to buildingwealthwithnotes.com, you can go there and sign up. Or if you want to reach out to me, if you have more questions, I'm more than happy to send you a bunch of information. Just email me, info@cashflowchick.com. You can see how it's spelled right there. So info@cashflowchick.com. I'm happy to send you a bunch of free information. Building Wealth with Notes workshop is coming up. And I only do 2 of these a year. I only have so much time, and I only do 2 of them a year. So this is the last one of the year. So if you're interested, go to buildingwealthwithnotes.com and sign up. And it's a lot of fun. We're doing it virtually. It's 3 days, hands-on, totally interactive, plus a ton of fun in between time, you know, and I just make it fun and exciting and interactive. So really cool stuff.
I am not surprised at all, because an in-person workshop I know is also fun and interactive and engaging, and you're really trying to teach how people can use this to implement it, not just fill their heads with knowledge, but hopefully fill their heads with the capacity to actually apply the information that you're sharing with them. So I know that that's one of your focuses as a teacher. So,
and I actually also give them my team. So you actually have a leg up. Not only do I give you the information, I give you my team. Yeah.
If you give them your team, they have a serious leg up. Sorry, but
so I don't hold anything back, Christina. You know that. If I'm going to teach somebody how to fish, I'm going to give them all the tools.
That's right. That's right. You're not going to give them a fish. You're going to teach them how to fish. Because when I said I wanted to invest with you, you're like, no, you have to get educated first. It was like, no, I'm not going to just give you a fish. I'm going to even make you, Christina, learn how to fish. And I'm like, okay, fine.
Well, it's important because you need to know how I'm going to treat your money, and at least the basics. You don't have to know how to do every single step. You don't have to know that, but you at least have to know kind of what I'm talking about. So when we have our meetings, because as you know, we have our meetings.
Yes, we do. We have our meetings. They show up on my calendar. I love it. Every quarter, there it is. I'm like, oh, great. I have a meeting with Paige. I love that. It's on my calendar already. I don't have to worry about it. Exactly. Here we go.
Exactly.
I don't have to chase you down. You're chasing me down to give me information.
That's right. That's right. That's how we roll.
That's right. That's exactly how you roll. It's what I love about it.
Yep. Yeah. So, you know, but that's important. It's important if you're trusting your hard-earned invested dollars to somebody. You know, there's a lot of shiny objects out there. Just educate yourself. You don't have to know all the gritty details, but educate yourself enough to know that and understand the investment medium that the person who is taking your dollars is really working in. That's why it's important for me.
I think that's really well said. It's beautiful scenario as to why I keep pushing education, even if you're not going to be the primary person running it.
Yeah.
The education is so important. All right, Paige. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Paige Panzarello, the coolest cash flow chick I know of. She is awesome. You can go to her website. You can look up her name on Google. Pretty straightforward. Cash flow chick will do it. You don't have to spell her complicated last name, even though it's beautiful. There's no way. Paige Panazar. No.
Yes.
Cash flow chick. She's easy to find. She's delightful to work with, and she is a joy. So check her out anytime. Thank you for listening to Real Estate Breakthrough. Tune in next week for the next show.